I guess I should start by saying that I never really thought something like this would happen to me, not in the way it did, not in the middle of what was supposed to be just another quiet fishing trip in early March. I've been fishing since I was a kid, I've been walking across frozen lakes in winter for decades, and I thought I knew how to read the ice, how to tell if it would hold me, how to stay safe. But the truth is, nature has a way of reminding you that you never really have full control, and sometimes the smallest mistake or the tiniest bit of overconfidence can turn into the scariest experience of your life. So this is me telling my story, not because I enjoy reliving it, I don't, but because I want people to understand what it feels like, what you think in those moments when you're fighting the cold, when you're on the edge between panic and survival, and when every little choice you make could be the difference between making it out alive or not. That morning was gray and damp, and the air carried that mix of smells you only get in early spring, half snow, half thawing ground, a bit of wet leaves, a bit of smoke from someone's chimney far away. I woke up earlier than usual, because I had this urge to get out before the day warmed up too much. I knew the ice would be sketchy. I'd been watching it retreat, I'd noticed the dark patches near the shoreline, and I had seen how the water was starting to push up in spots. But I convinced myself it would still be okay, because nights had still been freezing, and because I wanted that feeling of being out there one more time before the season was truly over. It was like I wanted to hold on to winter just a little longer, even though spring was right there, knocking hard. I packed light, a small rod, a thermos of coffee, a couple of sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, and my old pocket knife. I didn't bring the heavier safety gear, didn't bring the picks, didn't bring extra clothes. I thought, I'll only be out for a couple of hours, what could go wrong? That line still echoes in my head because now I know just how much can go wrong in only a couple of minutes. I threw on my winter coat, boots that had seen better days, and a knit hat. My gloves were already damp from the night before, but I didn't care. I was more focused on the idea of sitting by my little fishing hole, sipping hot coffee, and listening to the silence. When I reached the lake, I could see right away that the ice didn't look right. The edges were soft, slushy, almost like wet sugar. The color had that dull gray to it instead of the clean white blue that tells you it's solid. I hesitated, I really did. I stood there with my gear in my hand and thought maybe I should just head to the riverbank instead, or maybe I should go home. But stubbornness won. I tested a spot near the reeds with my boot, and though the top layer cracked a little, it seemed to hold. So I stepped on, telling myself I'd just stay near shore, just test my luck but not push too far. Every step made a sound, not the reassuring hard click of deep ice but more like a wet cracking noise, a creak that had a bit of water gurgling beneath it. It put me on edge, but I kept going because the spot I liked to fish was maybe 30 yards out, right where the lake bent and the pines blocked the wind. I thought if I could just get there, drill a hole, I'd be fine. And then I felt that sickening moment that I will never forget. The ice beneath me sagged, my right foot punched through, water splashed cold up my leg, and before I could shift my weight back, the whole sheet gave way under me. It wasn't like in movies where there's some dramatic shatter. It was almost silent, just a dull crack, and then suddenly I was in, the world flipped, and my chest slammed against icy water that knocked the breath right out of me. It felt like knives, hundreds of them stabbing every inch of skin. The shock was so total that my body locked up. I gasped involuntarily, which meant I sucked in freezing water, coughed, and flailed. My boots dragged me down, and my heavy coat felt like it was trying to pull me straight to the bottom. For a second, I thought, this is it, I'm not getting out of this. But instinct kicked in. I've read stories about people in cold water before, and somewhere in the back of my mind I remembered, don't thrash, don't panic, spread out your arms, get to the edge, kick hard. So I forced myself to turn, slapped my hands flat on the jagged ice, and tried to haul myself up. The ice broke again, chunks floating around me, but I didn't stop. I kicked, pushed, clawed, every movement slow and heavy like I was fighting glue. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably less than a minute, I managed to belly slide up onto more solid ice. My chest heaved, my face burned from the wind hitting wet skin, and I just lay there, half in disbelief, half in gratitude that I wasn't already sinking below. I knew the danger wasn't over. In fact, it was just starting. The water had soaked through everything, coat, sweater, jeans, boots, and the cold was wrapping itself tighter around me by the second. I'd heard once that people who fall into icy water sometimes survive the fall but then die later from hypothermia because they don't get dry fast enough. That thought pushed me into action. I rolled further onto the ice, careful not to break it again, crawled toward the reeds, and finally made it back onto snowy ground. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip my zippers. I yanked off my coat, then my sweater, then peeled off those waterlogged jeans that felt like cement. I stripped down to my thermal undershirt and shivered so hard my teeth rattled like stones. Now the problem was clear: I needed warmth, and I needed it fast. Luckily, I knew there was an old hunter's shack maybe a 10-minute walk into the woods from where I was. It wasn't much, just a forgotten log hut with gaps in the roof, but I'd stumbled across it in summers before and I knew it still had a half-collapsed stove inside. If I could get there, I could maybe get a fire going. The idea of fire became everything. My body screamed at me to move, to keep the blood flowing. So I gathered what little gear I had managed to save from the ice. My backpack had floated long enough for me to drag it out, and I stumbled into the trees. That walk felt eternal. Every step hurt, like my muscles were turning to stone, like the cold was settling inside my bones. My fingers were stiff, and I kept dropping things. I remember talking to myself out loud, telling myself, "Don't stop, don't sit down, don't rest, just keep going." The woods were quiet except for the sound of my boots squishing and the occasional crow overhead. I felt completely alone, and a part of me wondered if anyone even knew I was out there. When I finally saw the crooked outline of the shack, I almost cried. I pushed the door open, and the smell of old wood and mold hit me, but I didn't care. It was shelter, and it was mine for as long as I needed it. I dumped my bag, pulled out the knife, and started ripping apart some of the rotting boards from the corner for kindling. My hands didn't want to work. They were so numb I couldn't even strike the lighter at first. I fumbled, cursed, rubbed them together until I got a tiny bit of feeling back, and then finally, blessedly, the lighter sparked. The flame was weak, but it caught on the dry shavings, and soon I had a small, crackling fire in the stove. I crouched right over it, hugging myself, feeling the heat bite into my frozen skin. Steam rose off my clothes as they dried near the flames. The shack groaned in the wind, but to me it was the safest place in the world right then. I knew I couldn't walk back to the village like that, not soaked, not weak. I needed to stay put, keep warm, and hope that someone would come looking when I didn't return. Hours passed. I don't even know how many. Time got strange, stretched out. I dozed off, then woke up shivering, then fed the fire, then paced in circles to keep blood moving. I thought about my family, about how stupid I had been to go out there without telling anyone where I was going. I thought about all the times I'd laughed off warnings about thin ice. Every little memory came back sharp and painful, like the cold itself was carving them into my mind. Night fell, and with it came a kind of fear I hadn't felt since childhood. The shack was pitch dark except for the glow of the fire. Every sound in the woods felt louder, the crack of branches, the rustle of animals. I wrapped myself in my half-dried coat, sat close to the flames, and kept repeating that I just had to last until morning. And then, sometime after dawn, I heard it, the distant hum of an engine, then voices calling through the trees. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But the sounds grew louder, closer, until finally a flashlight beam cut through the cracks of the shack. I stumbled out, waving my arms, shouting hoarsely. The rescue team, 2 men in bright jackets, looked as surprised as I was relieved. They rushed over, wrapped me in a thermal blanket, and told me I was lucky, really lucky. Apparently, a neighbor had seen me head toward the lake the day before and called when I didn't come back. If not for that, who knows how long I would have been there. Looking back now, I realize how close it all was. A few more minutes in the water, and I probably wouldn't have had the strength to climb out. If I'd sat down in the woods instead of forcing myself to keep moving, I might have frozen before reaching the shack. And if I hadn't gotten that fire going, I don't even want to think about it. It's strange how fragile life feels when you stack up all those little ifs and maybes. So that's my story. I'm telling it because I don't want anyone else to make the same mistakes I did. Don't trust thin ice, not even for a minute. Don't go out alone without telling someone where you're headed. Don't think you're tougher than nature, because you're not. If you're lucky, like I was, you get a second chance, and you get to sit here later and talk about it into a camera. But not everyone does. Some people fall through and never come back. So if hearing me ramble on makes even one person more careful, then maybe it was worth sharing. And that's the truth of what happened out there on that March day, me against the cold, me learning the hardest way possible that survival isn't about being strong, it's about being smart, being prepared, and respecting the world around you.